Good evening, folks. And there goes my phone doing what it always does. Okay, good evening. We're here once again with Friday Night Tech Talk. We do this every Friday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time from the U.S. and wherever you are in the world. If you're new here, welcome and glad to have you here. So we do a little reporting each week. We pick some of the stories from the last week, from the tech stories, and we just go through the articles, and everybody makes their comments. And sometimes we have a bit of a discussion. And there are times when Mike and Will and Ted, any of the three, will join me, and times when they don't. Most of the time, it's just me, Mobile Geezer. Mike has already told me he won't be with us tonight. And as far as Will and Ted, yeah, you never know. And speaking of Mike, just want to give you a heads up. Next Friday's Friday Night Tech Talk will be on Mike's Joker Tech channel. So next Friday night, 8 o'clock, go to Joker Tech. He'll be hosting the show. And I'll put another reminder about that during the week. I'm sure Mike will too, and I'll remind you guys at the end of tonight's show. So if nobody else comes in, as usual, it'll be a quicker show than if we have Mike and I and others discussing. So, as I usually do, I will show you the website, my website, where you can follow the stories. Let me get my branding stuff out of the way meanwhile. So if you go to mobilegeezer.wordpress.com, click on the date at the top, that'll take you to tonight's stories, and you'll be able to follow along in the stories with us. Now, Annette's here. Annette, glad to have you here. Glad you made it. So we've had Eleanor first, and then Renz. I know Renz, he's probably getting ready to go to work. Always glad that he checks in with us first. And then Annette is here, and she says hello to everybody. So, just to let you know what we'll be talking about tonight. Of course, Apple set out its announcement for its event on September 7th. So I just said it's official. Apple's Far Out event, that's what they're calling it, set for September 7th. And then, sticking with the Apple theme, turns out Apple has joined some of the other big tech companies in layoffs. So we'll be talking about a story on Gizmodo about who they've laid off. Followed by, which I think is an interesting announcement, especially since I'm strictly a T-Mobile user, your 5G device will connect to satellites by next year via Starlink and T-Mobile. So they have, as long as you have 5G, so they have a deal going, which I think is pretty cool. Then we've got a very big whistleblower story on Twitter. And I gather the guy that used to be the head of security at Twitter. So they're trying to downplay it. And then I came up with a pretty good story about the Galaxy Buds Pro, which I put my video out, I guess, about an hour and a half ago about them. Just got mine. Oh, can you see? If I can get you over here. So just got my Galaxy Buds Pro here. So we'll be talking about them a little bit. And if we get to it, the last story about how YouTube has created a page just for podcasts. So that'll be tonight's show. So without further ado, let me put back my branding stuff. There we go, in case anybody wants to donate a super chat. And we'll go back to the top of tonight's stories and share again. Okay, so we're going to start off with the Apple event. And this I took from The Verge. So Apple's iPhone 14 launch event is happening September 7th. Expect the iPhone 14 lineup and new Apple Watches by Jake Peters. Let's get this in reader view and get rid of some of these ads. Okay. Apple's next product launch event will take place on September 7th. The company announced in an invitation sent to journalists today. This was 2 days ago. At the show, Apple is expected to share details on upcoming iPhones and Apple Watches. The invite, which has the tagline "Far Out," is for an in-person event at the Steve Jobs Theater at Apple's Cupertino campus, which would be the company's first big product launch event to take place in the theater since the start of the pandemic. Apple hosted an in-person event for this year's WWDC keynote, but that took place outdoors. The company will also be streaming the September 7th event online. So it seems like it's going to be part in person, part online. So this is what the invite looked like. So it's going to be at 10 a.m. Pacific time. So for me, that's 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and that's perfect. That's a Wednesday, and I am off on Wednesdays. The iPhone 14 lineup will likely be the main attraction. It is for me. Apple is rumored to introduce 4 models: a 6.1-inch iPhone 14, a new 6.7-inch iPhone 14, possibly with the Plus or Max tag, a 6.1-inch iPhone 14 Pro, and a 6.7-inch iPhone 14 Pro Max. That's the one I plan to get. Yes, that means Apple likely won't be releasing a new mini phone, much to the disappointment of the dozens of us in the iPhone mini fan club. Didn't even know there was such a thing. Makes sense, though. The biggest upgrades could come to the Pro line. Perhaps the biggest change is the rumored axing of the infamous notch in favor of a hole punch selfie camera and a pill-shaped cutout for Face ID. Apple is also expected to be adding an always-on mode for the display that will be exclusive to the Pro phones. Perhaps it will let you see iOS 16's new lock screen widgets even when you click the screen off. And we've discussed it enough and shown enough pictures in the last few weeks that you probably know what that looks like. But let's see, do we have any pictures here? We'll see after we get through with it. As for cameras, the primary camera on the Pros is expected to get a major boost to a 48 megapixel sensor, and all four 14 models are rumored to have an autofocus-enabled front-facing camera. The intriguing Far Out tagline could be teasing a few other improvements, maybe updates to the telephoto camera on its iPhones, or the long-rumored satellite connectivity of some kind, which I've got a story coming up about that, not for Apple. In a short video tweeted by Apple's SVP of Marketing, Greg Jaswiak, I guess, really leans into the stars motif, which could suggest the addition of an astrophotography feature. The 3 new Apple Watches made debut at the event as well. The Apple Watch Series 8 is rumored to look like the Series 7, but add a body temperature sensor. A revised Apple Watch SE is reportedly in the works with a faster chip, but the same body as the current model. And the new high-end watch is reportedly one targeted towards extreme sports athletes and may have a bigger screen and longer battery life. I don't think I'll be picking up a watch. But you never know. The company is also rumored to be working on new AirPods Pro and iPads, and Apple has already said that a new a new Mac Pro is in the hopper too. So there's always the possibility those could be revealed at this upcoming event. But most people think it's going to be in October. We'll be covering everything coming out of the show, so keep it locked on The Verge. So that's it. Let me get out of read view to see if there were any other pictures. Now, of course, we've seen many pictures of the renders of the phones for weeks and months, and we've covered them many times in the past. So we're good there. So let's stop screen. Nothing new in the comments. So we'll go on to the next story. Again, Apple. And this was on Gizmodo. Apple reportedly begins layoffs as it prepares for yet another return to office push. And this was by Mac DeGuerin, I guess. This is like over a week ago. So let's go to read view. And now we'll try to go to read view. Okay. Though they held out longer than most, Apple has reportedly finally succumbed to the great tech layoffs of 2020. Didn't know it was such a big deal, but I gather it is. The big tech titan reportedly laid off around 100 of its contract-based recruiters over the past week, according to sources speaking in a recent Bloomberg report. Those alleged layoffs come amid a hiring slowdown in Apple and during a wider tech turndown that's forced tens of thousands of tech workers to start looking for new jobs. Apple's recent layoffs notably did not affect any full-time employees, and some contract recruiters were able to keep their jobs. Those unlucky 100 or so who lost their jobs reportedly received a message from Apple saying they were laid off due to changes in Apple's business needs. The former recruiters who spanned multiple regions will reportedly receive 2 weeks of pay and medical benefits. Apple did not immediately respond to Gizmodo's request for comment, though CEO Tim Cook acknowledged some pains attributed to rising inflation in an interview with CNBC last month. We do see inflation in our cost structure, Cook said. We see it in things like logistics and wages and certain silicon components. And we're still hiring, but we're doing it on a deliberate basis. So, okay. The layoffs come just as Apple is preparing yet another push to bring more of its workers back into the office. After multiple botched efforts, Apple has reportedly set a new target deadline for September 5th, so 2 days before the event, to bring its corporate employees back into the office at least 3 days per week, Bloomberg notes. Those days would include Tuesdays, Thursdays, and one additional day determined by individual teams. Apple executives have tried to reel workers back into expansive corporate offices since 2021, but additional pesky COVID variants and increased infection rates led the company to perpetually delay hard requirements. The company's efforts have drawn repeated criticism from Apple employees and were reportedly a motivating factor in the former director of machine learning's departure earlier this year. Around the same time as his departure, a group of Apple employees wrote an open letter to company executives criticizing the policies which they claim were driven by fear. We are not asking for everyone to be forced to work from home, the letter reads. We are asking to decide for ourselves, together with our teams and direct manager, what kind of arrangement works best for each one of us, be that in an office, work from home, or a hybrid approach. Okay. Layoffs have touched just about every corner of the industry, affecting everything from AI and fintech startups to cryptocurrency firms and about everything in between. Just in the past few months, Netflix, Klarna, Calm, Substack, Tesla, and Coinbase have all issued layoffs of various sizes. Overall, Crunchbase estimates that some 34,000 tech workers have lost their jobs in 2022. That's a lot. Unemployment claims across the U.S. economy generally, meanwhile, are at an 8-year high. So I guess lucky for Apple, it's only 100 and not employees, really, just contractors. But we'll see how it goes. I guess it's just par for the course this year. So let's come out of that. Okay, we're going to move on. Now a story that kind of excited me. Your 5G device will connect to satellites by next year via Starlink and T-Mobile. This is also on The Verge. T-Mobile and SpaceX Starlink says your 5G phone will connect to satellites next year. Coverage above and beyond, that's what it's called, the program, promises an end to dead zones if you can wait, by Mitchell Clark and Richard Lawler. And this is from yesterday, so let's get up to reader view. Okay. T-Mobile said it's getting rid of mobile dead zones thanks to a new partnership with SpaceX's Starlink satellite internet at an event hosted by T-Mobile CEO Mike Sievert and Elon Musk. With their coverage above and beyond setup, mobile phones could connect to satellites and use a slice of a connection, providing around 2 to 4 megabits per second connection total across a given coverage area. That connection should be enough to let you text and messages and even use select messaging apps whenever you have a clear view of the sky, even if there's no traditional service available. That's good. According to a press release from T-Mobile, the satellite to cellular service will be available everywhere in the continental U.S., Hawaii, parts of Alaska, Puerto Rico, and territorial waters. The service is scheduled to launch in beta by the end of next year in select areas. This is saying end of next year, so we'll see. And Sievert says he hopes it will someday include data. According to Musk, second-generation Starlink satellites launching next year will be able to broadcast service using part of T-Mobile's mid-band. And I have Cortana talking in my ear. Sorry about that. According to Musk, second-generation Starlink satellites launching next year will be able to broadcast service using part of T-Mobile's mid-band PCS spectrum. And the mid-band is the one I think they mainly picked up when they merged with Sprint, which was bolstered when it was allowed to buy Sprint a few years ago. Yeah, right. Musk said the new satellites have big antennas that are 5 to 6 meters across to enable the new connections, and that the plan is to launch the equipment using its upcoming Starship rocket. If there aren't too many people in the cell zone, you may potentially even have a little bit of video, said Musk. As Sievert described it, operators of messaging apps like WhatsApp or iMessage will need to work with T-Mobile and Starlink for their services to recognize the satellite connection or work with it once it launches. Musk provided a bit more detail by saying that unlike usual internet service, it could work without access to Starlink's full satellite constellation. By limiting it to certain messages and services, as well as only in places that don't currently have cellular connectivity, it could use a more intermittent connection for basic coverage, although you might have to wait 30 minutes for a message to go through. That's not too great, but what the heck. And Brian's in here. Hey, Brian, glad to have you here. He's saying hello to everybody. Okay. You're waiting 30 minutes for the message, but I guess you're lucky enough to be hooked to a satellite without dead zone, so I guess it's a good thing. The two execs said they're seeking partnerships with mobile carriers worldwide who would be interested in reciprocal spectrum sharing agreements so that their customers can link up with SpaceX. T-Mobile customers could also use these connections when they come to other countries. Musk also said on Twitter that one of his companies, Tesla, will use the technology for the premium connectivity feature in its electric vehicles. Currently, Tesla uses AT&T's network for things like live traffic, visualization, satellite view maps, and music streaming. So I guess this here, Ed. Musk said the service can even work while your phone is in your pocket or in a car. Okay. Sievert says that when it launches, T-Mobile's vision is for it to be included for free in the carrier's most popular plans. Good. Though he did say that today's event isn't an official announcement. So they're making an announcement, but it's not official. Okay. He said T-Mobile wants to make it available to people with low-cost plans for a monthly service fee lower than current satellite connectivity services. That does potentially encompass a wide range of prices, though. Garmin's InReach satellite messenger subscription plans, for example, start at $14.95 per month, but go up to $64.95 a month. So I'm hoping it's not going to increase my bill. I don't think so. We'll see. T-Mobile said that subscribers' current phones will be able to utilize the network. No special equipment required. And of course, you have to have 5G for this. As Elon Musk said in the announcement, the phone you currently have will work. The fact that it's using traditional cell spectrum is a bit of a double-edged sword. Not requiring special equipment is an obvious advantage, but T-Mobile doesn't own the rights to that spectrum worldwide. Yes, just in the U.S. So while SpaceX's satellites could technically communicate with phones internationally, T-Mobile may not have rights to the same bands its system uses when you take your phone to another country or to international waters. Well, that's why they're looking for deals around the world. And once again, I've got Katana in my ear. I guess my earbuds are talking to Katana, which I guess is a good thing. That's not the case for traditional satellite communications networks like the Iridium system Garmin uses. If phone manufacturers wanted to introduce their own version of this feature, something Apple has been rumored to be working on, that's true, partnering with other satellite providers could net them more coverage than T-Mobile's planning to offer. As Walter Piecyk, I think that's how you pronounce it, an analyst at LightJet Partners tells The Verge, Apple and Samsung might have an easier time integrating existing satellite connectivity into their upcoming phones than Starlink will face in trying to cobble together spectrum rights with wireless operators around the globe. Yeah, my guess is we'll be fine in the U.S., but getting it in other places is probably going to be iffy. Fights over spectrum rights could get messy and indeed already have. T-Mobile and Verizon have lobbied the FCC to stop a company called AST, I guess AST in science, from launching satellites that could provide mobile phone service from space, claiming that the system could interfere with its land-based networks. SpaceX is embroiled in a battle with Dish Networks over the 12 gigahertz spectrum, which the latter wants to use for terrestrial 5G. Musk's company has warned its home internet users that Dish using 12 gigahertz could totally destroy its satellite internet service. Analysts have even questioned whether the service announced today will require additional approvals from the FCC. You wouldn't think so, but you never know. Sievert also said that T-Mobile was open to the possibility of using SpaceX for its network backhaul in the future, especially in rural areas. Yeah, I would think rural areas are going to benefit from this a lot. While that's a few steps ahead from what the two companies are pitching now, again, Musk says each cell would support around 2 to 4 megabits. It could help make it less expensive for the carrier to expand its network. Such a plan would be similar to what Verizon announced in collaboration with Amazon's Cooper Satellite Internet project. Now, that plan seems much further away from fruition, as Amazon doesn't seem to have launched any of its satellites yet. Earlier this year, SpaceX lost a bid for rural internet subsidies because of the cost of its equipment. But if it can piggyback off T-Mobile's existing equipment, which people in rural areas may already own, that could help its case with the Federal Communications Commission. The Thursday presentation certainly hit on rural coverage with videos of people in remote parks and mountains or herding animals. So very interesting. So hopefully by next year, those of us on T-Mobile, which is always me, will be having no more dead zones, I hope, without getting charged. I also hope. So we'll see. So that's that story. Okay, nothing new in the comments. So I told you it's going to be a short night, folks, unless Will or Ted show up, which doesn't look like they're going to. So back to share screen. Okay, this is an interesting story, kind of long, but an interesting story. And this was the first I've heard of this. A whistleblower causing big trouble for Twitter. This was on CNN Business. And the story is titled, How Much Trouble is Twitter In with Regulators by Brian Fung. And I guess this is the whistleblower who worked for Twitter. So I'm not going to play that. So let's go into review, read these ads. Okay, this is pretty heavy duty stuff, I think. Oh, Brian, thank you so much as always. So you're very, very kind and very faithful. Okay, I think this is going to end up being a very big deal. An explosive whistleblower disclosure by Twitter's former head of security, so that's their former head of security, this week exposes the company to new federal investigations and potentially billions of dollars in fines, tougher regulatory obligations, and other penalties from the U.S. government, according to legal experts and former federal officials. Twitter faces tremendous legal risks stemming from the whistleblower disclosure by Peter Mudge Zatko, who claims in a nearly 200-page disclosure to authorities, that's a lot of pages, that the company is riddled with information security flaws, and that in some cases its executives have misled its own board and the public on the company's condition, if not perpetrated outright fraud. Twitter has accused Zatko, now keep in mind he was the head of their security, but now since he's on the other side, they're going to deny everything. So can't tell you who's right, but it sure sounds serious. Twitter has accused Zatko, who worked with the company from November 2020 until he was fired this January for what Twitter says was poor performance of pushing a false narrative about Twitter. Yeah, he was fired for exactly what he's saying, obviously. And our privacy and data security practices that is riddled with inconsistencies and inaccuracies and lacks important context. Zatko is a highly regarded cybersecurity expert with experience in senior roles at Google, Stripe, and the Defense Department. Well, somewhat even I've worked for the Defense Department. His whistleblower disclosure was first reported by CNN and the Washington Post on Tuesday. In his disclosure to the U.S. government, Zatko claims Twitter suffers egregious deficiencies in its cybersecurity posture. You would think he would know. Deliberately misled regulators about its handling of user data, and that the company is not living up to its obligations under a 2011 privacy settlement with the FTC, which I gather it's a very big deal if they're not living up to that. A legally binding order that requires, among other things, the creation, now get this, of reasonable safeguards to protect users. They love words like that because it's such a vague phrase. Who's defining what reasonable safeguards is? That's the key. To protect users' personal information. The FTC declined to comment on the disclosure. Zatko's damning disclosure alleges that roughly half of Twitter's employees, now get this, including all its engineers, that's heavy duty, have excessive internal access to the company's live product known within the company as production, along with actual user data. Now, I've worked on a couple of projects where we had access to live production data, and that was always a big no-no. I've always been surprised, especially coming in as a contractor, which is what I was, that they would even give us this live data. I remember working for MBNA back in Dallas in the mid-90s, and I was on this project for about 2 months. And as soon as I got on, I realized that my credit card was in that system, and we had their live data. And I could have changed and wiped my account out and changed it, and everybody said, you should do that. And I said, no, I can't do that. But I mean, that's what happens when you get a hold of live production data. It also alleges the company lacks the ability to defend against insider threats, foreign governments, and accidental data leaks. But when you talk about that, half of all the engineers can get the production data, that's really bad. A fundamental engineering and security principle is that access to live production environments should be limited as much as possible, you think? But at Twitter, engineers built, tested, and developed new software directly in production with access to live customer data and other sensitive information in Twitter systems. Yeah, that's what we did back in the 90s, and everybody thought it was nuts then. Twitter has told CNN its FTT compliance record speaks for itself, citing third-party audits filed to the agency under the 2011 consent order. Twitter added it complies with relevant privacy regulations and that it has been transparent with regulators about its efforts to fix any shortcomings in the system. That their expert is saying that's not true. Zatko did not participate in the audit work and did not fully comprehend Twitter's FTC obligation. Oh, yeah, he's an expert, but highly thought of, but he doesn't understand. Okay. Or how the company was fulfilling them, Twitter said. The disclosure claims Zatko staff were intimately familiar with Twitter's issues before the FTC, and that it was they who told Zatko Twitter was never in compliance with the 2011 order, nor on track to become compliant. This is his lawyer. We absolutely stand by the contents of Mudge's disclosure, Zatko's lawyer, and found a whistleblower ad. That's John Tai. Whistleblower aide, the organization representing him, told CNN. Zatko may be eligible for a monetary award. I didn't know they did this from the U.S. government as a result of his whistleblower activities. Original, timely, and credible information that leads to a successful enforcement action by the SEC could earn whistleblowers up to a 30% cut of agency fines related to the action if the penalties amount to more than $1 million. That's pretty good. The SEC has said the SEC has awarded more than $1 billion to more than 270 whistleblowers since 2012. Nice program. Zatko filed his disclosures to the SEC to help the agency enforce laws and to gain federal whistleblower protections, Tai said. The prospect of a reward was not a factor in Mudge's decision, and in fact, he didn't even know about the reward program when he decided to become a lawful whistleblower. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't know about it. The whistleblower disclosure comes months after the FTC leveled its own allegations that Twitter misused account and security information for advertising purposes in violation of the 2011 order. So that was their second strike on that 2011. Twitter agreed to pay $150 million in May to resolve those claims in a second FTC settlement. So that was their second strike. Now, Zatko's disclosure raises the prospect of yet another possible violation of Twitter's FTC commitments, an extraordinarily dangerous position for a company and its executives to be in, according to John Leibowitz, who was the chair of the SEC at the time of Twitter's 2011 settlement. Pardon me while I take a quick drink. This is Leibowitz talking. If the facts are true, they would constitute violations of the order and of the FTC Act. And that would make Twitter a 3-time loser. Sure, that would be the third strike. There would be no reason for the FTC not to throw the book at them. Of course, Leibowitz added the FTC would need to conduct a thorough investigation first to determine for itself whether a new violation has occurred. Senator Richard Blumenthal, chair of the Senate Subcommittee on Consumer Protection and a former, and there goes Cortana in my ear again. The former Connecticut Attorney General said in a statement Tuesday that Zatko's disclosures reveal that responsibility for Twitter's security failures rests with those at the top. Well, yeah. He further urged the FTC in a letter to investigate the allegations, saying officials should find and hold Twitter executives personally accountable if it's found that they were responsible for violations of the FTC Act or Twitter's consent order. The FTC's own credibility is on the line, Blumenthal said in the letter, which was also sent to the FTC on Tuesday. If the commission does not vigorously oversee and enforce its orders, they will not be taken seriously, and those dangerous breaches will continue, Blumenthal wrote. That makes sense. Under its charter, the FTC is authorized to prosecute unfair or deceptive business acts and practices. In the internet age, that has increasingly meant going after companies that claim to protect consumers' digital information, but that in fact fail to live up to their public claims or misrepresent those protections. Twitter's original 2011 settlement arose from 2 alleged incidents where hackers were able to compromise weak employee passwords and misuse their access to take over Twitter accounts and snoop on private information, in spite of Twitter's public statements on safeguarding user privacy and security. Gee, what a surprise. Twitter's settlement was not an admission of wrongdoing, of course not, but it required Twitter to create a comprehensive information security program that is reasonably designed, there's that phrase again, to protect the security, privacy, and confidentiality and integrity of non-public consumer information. A commitment Zatko alleges has never been met. Well, yeah, if you keep using the phrase reasonably designed and you don't say who's defining it and how, I guess they can do pretty much what they want, can't they? As part of its latest FTC settlement this year, Twitter committed to even more granular cybersecurity operations, including having access to policies and controls for all databases containing user data, as well as for systems that either grant employees access to Twitter accounts or that have information that enables or facilitates access to internal Twitter systems. Those obligations are already in effect following a judge's signing of the order this spring, further heightening the potential legal exposure for Twitter. So yeah, I said people are watching them pretty close. Despite Twitter's mounting regulatory requirements, Zatko alleges not much has changed at the company since the FTC's initial complaint more than a decade ago. And this guy is the expert. Things actually got meaningfully worse, his disclosure to Congress alleges. The disclosure claims that even as Twitter was actively negotiating the second settlement with the FTC last year, the company, in an entirely separate incident, allowed the very same type of misuse of user data for advertising purposes to again. So they were doing it while they were being investigated for this second offense. Okay. Anyway, I'm not going to go through this entire thing, But obviously, they're in a lot of trouble, and the fact that they're using live production data is insane to me. But obviously, there's a culture of laxity there. That's pretty obvious. And having been a programmer for 34 years, I can understand how that can happen, but it sounds to me like they're in some serious trouble, and they're going to have to do something about it pretty soon, or they're going to be in much worse trouble. That's my guess. Pardon me. So just a very interesting story. And of course, if Twitter gets in enough trouble, that's probably going to affect all of us, or a lot of us techies who are into Twitter. So, none of the other guys have come in yet, though. I've been watching. Nothing new in the comments, so go back to sharing screen. And now we're going to talk about the Galaxy Buds Pro, which I just put my video up today, and there's mine right there. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah. So I'll be working with these over the weekend, and we'll see how much I like them. Although I've already seen some very good reports about these things. And this one says, this is my title, Galaxy Buds 2 Pro looking to challenge Sony as kings of ANC. So we'll go over to Android Authority. Galaxy Buds 2 Pro take the fight to Sony to be the king of noise-canceling buds. Not the king of noise canceling, but perhaps a prince. This is by Zach Khan. So let's go into review. And Anthony is in here from My Project 13. Good evening, sir. Glad to have you here. And he says, hi, Brian. Saw one or two of your videos today, at least one of your videos today. And yeah, I guess, did I comment? I don't remember. But when you were driving to work in the dark, what was it, 3:30 in the morning, I think it was. That's right, and you were asking whether it was worth the upgrade from the Z Flip 3 to Flip 4 and that kind of thing, or Fold 3 to Fold 4. Anyway, it was a good video. I watched the whole thing, and of course, I gave it a thumbs up. So just wanted you to know that. So, Galaxy Buds, okay, I already read the highlights, and now we're going to go. Now in review, let me get it back the way it was. The Samsung Galaxy Buds 2 Pro are the latest and greatest true wireless earbuds from a tech giant that's become increasingly invested in building out an expansive ecosystem of interoperable gadgets. Part of that equation for many brands is a pair of flagship buds that differentiate themselves from cheaper set thanks to active noise canceling, ANC. And also, because last week I got the the Pixel Buds Pro. And last month I got the Buds 2, and before that I had the first Galaxy Buds Pro. So I've been getting a lot of buzz lately, and for me, I think they keep getting better. So I'm kind of in a good spot with the buds at the moment. Apple might have made noise-canceling earbuds popular with the AirPods Pro, but other brands have been refining their ANC chops. Notably, the Sony WF-1000X M4 stand out as the best ANC buds you can get these days. Can the Samsung Galaxy Buds 2 Pro take on the noise-canceling king? Almost. ANC that fits your lifestyle. When I first wore the Galaxy Buds 2 Pro and activated ANC, I noticed how much better they were at blocking out my fridge's annoying low-droning noise than their predecessors. I got to try that because my refrigerator's droning noise is kind of aggravating too. I haven't had time to try them out well yet. Buds that already slightly edged out the famous AirPods Pro when it came to noise canceling. Samsung claims that the new Buds 2 Pro will have an additional 3 decibels of attenuation than the previous model. The experts at our sister site, Sound Guys, will be testing these claims in greater detail in the coming weeks. Based on my experience, however, I can already tell that the Buds 2 Pro's ANC shines in the low frequency range. And every article I've read and every video I've seen is praising these buds. The Galaxy Buds 2 Pro don't reinvent the wheel regarding ear tips either, which is great because a good tip fit is crucial for noise canceling. And I found with the Buds 2 and also with the Pixel Buds Pro, they fit my ears like a T. So I'm hoping these do also. Well, I'll find out this weekend when I ride the bicycle. Samsung offers a selection of silicone tips to choose from, and they strike a good balance between malleable enough to be comfortable and stiff enough to keep the buds in place. Unlike the Sony WF-1000XM4, these aren't foam, so getting a tight seal might be slightly trickier. But once you find a set of tips that fit, the isolation is pretty good. And that's what I found with the Buds 2 and with the Pixel Buds Pro, because I usually have problems with them dropping out of my left ear. With these, no problem. So I'm hoping the same is true of the Buds 2 Pro. And Cortana's talking to me again. Okay. The Galaxy Buds 2 Pro's voice detection system makes using ANC during a busy commute or workday far more convenient. Of course, there are times when you don't want noise canceling, like when speaking to other people. For those moments, you can elect to assign a tap control to adjust the ANC or to enable the voice detection feature, which returns from the first generation Galaxy Buds Pro, which I have sitting here also. This feature, which you'll need to turn on in Galaxy Wearable app, temporarily suspends ANC while you're speaking and goes into transparency mode. They will stay, I guess he meant that way, as long as you keep talking for 10 seconds afterwards. 10 seconds is an awkward pause in any conversation, so there's plenty of time to ensure you've actually stopped talking. That makes sense. I was skeptical at first because how good could the buds be at determining when I'm talking? Quite good, it turns out. Speaking to people without having to remove my earbuds is handier than I thought it would be. While they don't topple the WF-1000XM4 off their throne for isolation, the Galaxy Buds 2 Pro makes noise canceling more practical. Quick sip. These may not sound like groundbreaking features, but these earbuds are a solid evolution for Samsung's Tap Buds. Anthony is saying he still prefers to be wired. I'm just the opposite. But I rarely, if ever, use wires anymore. But of course, I've got, 11 or 12 pairs of true wireless earbuds right around me right now. And Mike still prefers headphones, and I can't stand headphones since I got so used to buds. So we're all different. Okay. Galaxy Buds 2 Pro are an evolution, not a revolution. The Buds Pro 2 also come with other refinements for Galaxy device owners, including 24-bit Galaxy device only and special audio compatibility with both 360 reality audio and Dolby Atmos. That means you can enjoy all the offerings from streaming services like Amazon Music Unlimited, though notably not Spotify. Head tracking in particular works well, but might not be all that useful for commuting. Who was I watching and saying the head tracking wasn't all that great or all that impressive? I think it might have been Jaime Rivera. Okay. Let's see. I think there's more. Okay. For those that like to tinker with the sound, the Galaxy Wearable app shows you a graph of what each equalizer preset does, but you can't make a custom EQ. An interesting thing is the Galaxy Wearable app was already on my phones because of my previous Buds Pro and my Buds 2. But when I installed this, it pulled out a new Galaxy wearable app that's not the same, just for the two Buds, the 2 Pro. So I just thought that was interesting. Bluetooth pairing is easy enough on both Galaxy and non-Galaxy devices, and most phones still only have the SBC and AAC Bluetooth codecs. So Galaxy owners will only get to enjoy the Samsung scalable codec. So hot or not, as far as design goes, Samsung has abandoned all shiny surfaces for this iteration of earbuds. That's true. Let me see if I can show you for a second here. Now here's the new ones. Nothing shiny. Now if you go to the original Pros, you can see they're very shiny and somewhat slippery. And yes, they caught fingerprints, and a lot of people like the new ones much better because of that. So I just want you to see that. Samsung started the first iteration of earbuds with a look more like the vanilla Galaxy Buds 2. It depends on your preferences if you like that. I find the matte textured case and Buds slightly easier to grip, so do I. The Buds shape is also similar to the Buds 2, so if you like these will feel comfortable too. Yeah, and these are a tiny bit smaller than the original Pros. Overall, the Galaxy Buds 2 Pro don't throw out anything that made the previous model a success. Instead, they take a proven formula and refine it. Good. While those earbuds don't beat the mightier and pricier Sony WF-1000 XM4, they make ANC easy to use as part of your everyday life, and Galaxy phone owners get some nifty bonus features thrown in as a bonus. Renz, I know you're at work, but you still managed to give me a donate. You're awesome. You're awesome. And as he says, don't forget to hit the like button. He's very busy at work. Such a nice man. Okay, are we done with this? Okay, last thing. The Samsung Galaxy Buds 2 Pro offers 24-bit audio and a handful of other adjustments to improve your listening experience. So, thinking I'm going to like these a lot, as much as I like the original Pro, and especially the 2, which I have here. So there's the 2. And that's the original Pro, which I traded in. I'll be sending these back to Samsung. And there's the new ones. I'll be comparing them all. And I'm pretty happy with earbuds here lately. So let me get rid of this story. Okay. So I'm very happy that Anthony came in. And if any of you didn't get to watch my Project 13, he put out a good video asking about whether it was worth the upgrade to the Flip and Fold. And he's driving to work in. Very good discussion. I highly recommend it. Of course, I highly recommend them all the time anyway. So, okay, nobody else came in, so I'm going to go to my last story of the week. I just thought it was interesting because I didn't know it was coming. And YouTube has made its own page for podcast. And this was on digital trends. YouTube is finally getting serious about podcasts by Anita George. I knew how to pronounce that last name, didn't I? Read a view. Podcasts certainly aren't new to YouTube, but the popular video sharing site appears to be making it easier to find them on its sprawling platform. 9 to 5 Google has reported that YouTube has created a dedicated Explore page for podcasts and that it's currently live on the site for some users. The new podcast page is apparently still rolling out and has been since at least late July. While not everyone is able to view the new Podcast Explore page right now, some of us at Digital Trends have been able to access it. I've been able to access it either on desktop or phone, so I have it. The new podcast page functions, as you would imagine, as a content discovery page for podcasting. See, that's what it looks like. Blew right by that. The page rounds up various podcast episodes and playlists and puts them into different categories such as popular episodes or popular podcast playlists. Say that 3 times fast. It even offers podcast recommendations based on your subscriptions and history. You also find a popular podcast creators category, which links to the YouTube channel pages of the creators listed in that category. The podcast page also offers playlist suggestions based on different genres and subjects like comedy, true crime, sports, and music. Overall, the page is pretty simple. It's a pretty simple setup for now, but it's easy to navigate. If your new podcast page has been rolled out to you, which it has for me, you should be able to ask it via one or both the following message or desktop. So if you go to your desktop, click Explore, you'll see podcasts. That's what I see when I go to desktop. For mobile, go to your mobile device on YouTube, click Explore, you get the same thing. You see podcasts. So it's pretty easy. I have access to both, but according to this, not everybody does yet. But I guess if you don't, you will. So just thought it was interesting that YouTube, and I think it's kind of right that YouTube has a page just for podcasts. I mean, it is YouTube. So now we're going to go to our usual last thing. Let's see if any. And as Brian said, where did I see that? Oh, Brian just said hi to Anthony. Okay. I was still seeing that like button from Renz. That's why. Okay. So as usual, we're going to end up with glowing rectangles. And just in case there's anyone here who doesn't know what glowing rectangles is, it's on Reddit. Let me get my stuff out of the way first. Okay. So if you go to reddit.com/r/glowing rectangles, this is a place where you get to post your videos, somebody else's video, anybody that wants exposure, your blog post, theirs. You want exposure, this is a place you can go to get it. This was started by Juan Bagnell, some gadget guy, and you can post there every day. And if you click on top, you'll see what got upvoted the most today. That's he and TK's show from last night, which I haven't gotten to watch it because they started, I guess, at 8 o'clock their time, which is 11 o'clock my time, and I had to get up at 5 o'clock on Friday morning to go to work. So I haven't seen the show yet. But anyway, that's quite a good number of upvotes. So I'll make it 9. So that's always going to be the story that got upvoted the most. Secondly, you'll always see a commercial. And then you'll see what got voted second most. This is also by one ZTE Axon 40. So that got sit-ups upvotes. Friday Night Open Mic, Halaturbi. And that's, I guess, last week's show because he comes on right after I get off. Usually get that an upvote. So You want to place a good exposure for you or somebody else? Just go put your video or your blog on reddit.com/r/glowing rectangles. So I always end up the show telling you folks about that in case somebody needs a little more exposure. So that's the show for this week's folks. Keep in mind, as I said in the beginning, next week, Friday Night Tech Talk will be on Mike's Joker Tech channel. So you'll have to go to Joker Tech. He'll be in charge of the show. I'll be on the show, I assume, but it will not be on the Mobile Geezer channel next week. So, as always, I hope everybody has a very blessed and happy weekend. And I will see you all next week. And please hit like and subscribe. See you next week.